Angelica, I can't help but wonder, the first time you were in full costume, full white makeup, you walk onto the soundstage, what kind of reaction do you get from people?
Um, well, good at first, because you know that, particularly if you're going to be a long time on this film, there's going to be a time where everyone's very bored with it. Um, but I think initially the reaction was good, and we felt that we'd achieved Morticia.
Do you feel that you had kind of like a certain power over men with all that makeup and all that?
Infinite power. Um, Particularly since there was practically no way to attack me. I was heavily corseted, heavily clothed. I had fingernails and wigs and hair. I was quite a contraption, and so it was something of an icon. You know, this wasn't anything that could be blown away.
Speaking of an icon, now every actor must have worries about going into a project. Now a movie like this, big budget film, it's also based on a very popular TV series. How concerned were you about comparisons?
I feel sort of guilty to say I didn't feel very concerned. I, I, I didn't watch Carolyn Jones very much because my concern was that I would become concerned, and that might turn into an imitation of her performance. I was a big aficionado of Charles Addams, and have been all my life, but particularly as a child. And I used to pore over his cartoons. So in a way, I sort of tried to revert to the cartoons and bypass both the Addams Family as a series and the Munsters, which is a sort of offshoot of the Addams Family. I watched a couple of episodes with half an eye on the television and half an eye elsewhere, just to get the sort of the general mood, but I didn't really want to take that on or take on those comparisons. I didn't really feel as though it would serve me in a positive way.
Okay. Talking about earlier in your career, now you wanted to be Juliet in Franco Zeffirelli's Romeo and Juliet.
Yes.
Now, was that, describe that period in your life. Was that kind of traumatic, not getting that role?
Well, what happened really was I was still at school. I was 15 years old, and there was a school search for girls in England to play Juliet. And I met with Mr. Zeffirelli's producer a few times. And then my father decided that I should do a film with him called A Walk with Love and Death. And I believe wrote a letter to Mr. Zeffirelli saying that, I wouldn't be available for Romeo and Juliet. And yes, I have to say I was disappointed because probably I was a sort of ungrateful child and wanted to work elsewhere than with members of my family, albeit that my father was who he was.
Now, in the mid-'70s, you were doing small roles in movies like The Swashbuckler and The Last Tycoon, and then you were involved in a really bad car accident. Now, what kind of impact did that have on the way you looked at your career?
Well, not just my career, but my life. It was a moment when it was called home vividly that I had to sort of get on with it. It was a close brush. I wasn't terribly hurt. My nose wound up on my sort of right cheek, but apart from that, and I had some concussion. And I had an operation to sort of remove bits of bone from my skull, my brain probably. But all in all, it just sort of it pointed the way for me a little in terms of what I was doing with my life and the fact that hitherto I hadn't been really as concentrated as I wanted to be. So it was after that accident that I went to class and started to get really serious.
Okay. I'm going to look at two quick questions and really quick here. I'm doing a story on the Oscars and what people do with their Oscars. Now, that first week, when you get the statue, what do you do with it and how do you treat it?
Touch it a lot. You give it to your friends to show them how heavy it is, and they hold it. And you put it back on the mantelpiece or wherever it is, and it moves around quite a lot in the first week.
Okay.
And later it finds its little niche.
And one real quick question. A movie like this, there's going to be a lot of merchandising involved. Now, when you're sitting down with your agents in the studio working out the deal, how do you, do you have an eye on that aspect of the film?
Oh, of course. If you're going to do a film which has merchandising, I think as someone who's part of the film, one should certainly have there should be benefits from that.